When life throws us challenges and our hearts are filled with pain, we often wonder, is it possible to forgive and put it all behind us? In this video, I will tell you my personal story, how I faced betrayal and loss, and how I was able to find the strength to forgive. What is the strength, brother? The truth, of course, but sometimes that truth is very hard and unwanted, and then what do? Strong male friendship, what could be better? Only love and not always, but often love does not stand the test of time, and friendship stands to the death. After all, a friend in trouble will not abandon and will not ask too much, so sings a famous children's song. And a loved one, unfortunately, can leave if he or she feels uncomfortable about something. Honey, we didn't agree on this. Kirill and Dennis had been friends since early childhood. They sat on pots together in kindergarten, went to the same school and graduated from the same university with a degree in economics and management. And then, already working however in different organizations, maintained very close relations, regularly returned calls and met. The young people had indeed a very close and trusting relationship. And then Kirill was lucky. His grandmother left him an inheritance. And suddenly, grandmother's savings were enough to become the startup capital to open their own company. Friends organized a design and construction firm engaged in construction and renovation. Kirill became the general director, and Dennis became his closest deputy. On the post of accountant invited Kiryushin a godmother, a friend of his mother, Anna Petrovna, and the firm began to gain momentum. Everything was going well. Soon Kirill married, and faithful Dan was at his wedding witness. Soon the family had a son, then a daughter, and Dennis was in active search. Where to hurry? So 5 years passed, the friends were doing well. Kiryusha's children grew up and pleased their parents. As they say, nothing foreshadowed. And then Dennis took a sick leave. I have serious health problems, I lie down for surgery. Maybe you need some help? And why didn't you tell me you were sick? Don't be shy. Kirill questioned his friend. I don't need anything, Dan answered discreetly. And I kept silent because I didn't want to burden you with my problems. And what is your diagnosis? Kiryusha did not persist. What, is it really the worst? Dennis either kept silent or evaded the answer and transferred the conversation to another. Yes, so and only so do real friends and real men complain and cry for help, only weaklings and mama's boys, the rest suffer in silence. But from the tone of his friend, Kirill realized that he really did not have everything in order. And then, during another telephone conversation, Dennis said that he had already been operated on and that he thought of leaving the company. How? Marveled perplexed friend. And why? Need time to recover and just to come to his senses? The post-operative period was complicated? What reason? You just say, I agree to wait as long as it takes. The main thing is that you do not worry and calmly heal. The place will be yours. But Dennis did not explain anything and silently switched off. He had become very taciturn lately, and then, in general, disappeared from the radar. He moved out of the apartment and changed his phone number. Is something serious? Tortured Kiryusha. Well, a man cannot just behave like this, especially with his best friend. No other way. Got into trouble. The search for results did not give results. As an option, it was possible to hire a private detective. But there was something humiliating about it. What kind of friends are you if one of you has to be searched for with the help of a detective? Or, as the classics of humor wittily wrote, to search in the other world with flashlights. And Kirill accepted the loss of his friend. Or maybe already lost. He hoped not. And he had no other options anyway. The bitterness of loss was leveled by other problems. The firm began to happen some bullshit, and soon it ceased to exist. Trouble does not come alone. How did it happen that a successful company stopped functioning? Yesterday, everything was fine, and today, our hello to you. The business collapsed, no one was found to blame. True, they weren't looking for him, although there were suspicions. More Kirill did not risk, and took a job in a government agency, 2 salaries, his and his wife Urka, was enough for a comfortable life. So past 20 years, grown children have already studied in institutes. The spouses bought a dacha. Both had cars, not life, but a fairy tale. Age Dan Kirill Andreevich accidentally saw in social networks, there was no doubt it was him, Dan, yes, replenished and almost bald. But his Dan alive, praise the creator. And at once Kirill was thrown back to that distant time when they were all happy, and he wanted to touch that happy and cloudless past. and the only way to do that was to meet a friend. After all, Dennis was still a friend to Kirill Andreevich, despite the absence of communication for 20 years. Little did he know what reasons he had for this, perhaps very substantial ones. Now they would meet and he would explain everything. And Kirill wrote to his friend, "I'm very glad you showed up, my friend, and apparently, you are in good health. Let's see each other at our favorite place, set a time." The favorite place meant a well-known cafe in the city. There they often met with customers and business partners. After all, as you know, informal atmosphere relaxes, and this in turn contributes to the successful completion of deals. Dan did not answer immediately. The request for a meeting had to be repeated, and Kirill Andreevich was already beginning to think that all this was for nothing when Dan agreed. They met and hugged as before, and sat down at the same table, which at that time was considered to be their happy one. And after general questions about his family and ordering for the waiter, Dennis said something that apparently had been bothering him all these years. "I ruined the firm." "Come on, friend, don't talk about yourself." Kirill Andreevich did not believe. "You still say that you also ruined the chapel. I'm not up to jokes now. If only the chapel, then so be it with the chapel. But then I really had a hand in it, but honestly, not out of malice. Almost by accident, I wanted what was best, but it turned out as always." And Denis Viktorovich confessed what he had been hiding for 20 long years. It was he who had started fiddling with competitors, which was absolutely not allowed. It is called unfair partnership. All this led to the fact that their joint firm ceased to exist. Kirill was stunned. That's how it turned out. Yes, Dennis had become quite secretive then. But all this was written off as a sudden and serious illness. What about the illness? Don't tell me there was no illness or surgery. Unfortunately or fortunately, there was neither illness nor surgery. Dennis was afraid of the consequences and decided to leave before he got beaten up. It was hard to say why that happened, and today's Dan didn't remember, or didn't want to remember, why yesterday's Dan began to behave so meanly in every sense. But apparently there was a very good reason for it, and as a result the company had been taken over by competitors, and the innocent accountant Anna Petrovna was blamed for everything for some reason. Who else? Because nobody thought about the director's friend and his deputy, nor for that matter did Kirill Andreevich himself. Then the Director General behaved very badly with Anna Petrovna, forgetting for a moment that she was his godmother, seeing in the woman only a guilty accountant. Apparently all this happened in a state of affect, when people do things without thinking about the consequences, and Anna Petrovna, who was yelled at by her favorite godson, did not explain anything, and even more so justify herself, but cried and left. And later, she stopped all communication with him, and not only with him. This was a great loss for their family. Mom, who had lost her best friend, was the one who was the most worried. Anya stopped talking to her too. Then they decided not to take the case to court. The godmother's guilt could not be proved. Everything remained at the level of suspicion. Now it all came to light. And this completely unwanted truth was humiliating and hard. Yes, indeed, unnecessary knowledge multiplies grief. "How can you accidentally ruin a good operating firm?" Kirill Andreevich shouted. "This is not a Sandolichuk one careless movement and all for nothing. Here, the matter of more than one day and accidentally just do not work. That's why I was always afraid that you do not believe me. Of course I won't believe you, and please don't talk nonsense. Well, don't believe me, I didn't really want to. I've lived without you all these years, and I'll live without you again." With these words, Denis Sergeyevich got up and went out. And Kirill remained sitting at the table with untouched plates. The order was brought to them. That's what he had achieved? Maybe it wasn't Dan's fault at all, then whose fault is it? Certainly not Aunt Anya, and why did he even invite his friend to meet? Let everything go on as it was. He'd been living without Dan all this time, but no, he wanted to see him. "Well, did you see him, you sentimental chalk?" I felt uneasy. I guess I shouldn't have yelled, I shouldn't have blamed him. Again this affect, be damned. Urka's wife was right. You need to work on yourself, not shout from the top of your lungs. There was no appetite, the good mood evaporated. The man paid for the order and left too. His condition was worse than ever. He seemed to be completely right, but there was a terrible discomfort on his soul. So, not quite right. And now what? In the evening, tormented by vague doubts, Kirill Andreevich called Dennis. They had time to exchange phone numbers. "I was wrong. Let's meet again and talk." "About what? Are you going to accuse me again?" "I'm tired of my own accusations for 20 years. You think I have no conscience?" "Yes, Kiryuka. And do you know how it gnaws at me? That's why I agreed to meet with you and apologize. Dan said, but agreed to meet again. They met again at the same place at the happy table and tried to talk calmly, and to answer the two eternal questions, who was to blame and what to do. This time they succeeded. So the friends decided not to rake up the past anymore. What was, and to bury the hatchet. Yes, and continue to be friends like before. Though it was unlikely to work, too much had been done and it would be impossible to forget it all. But you can try, because at 50, you can't change horses at the crossroads. Yes, but no more joint business. So decided both friends. Now Cyril had to apologize and establish relations with Aunt Anya, for this time he never bothered to do it. And the woman herself did not take any steps in this direction. Godmother had already retired and moved to live in the suburbs, and to ask for forgiveness was no less difficult. After all, he then very much not only offended her but also humiliated her with his suspicions. In short, the innocent aunt was accused and tarnished her reputation. It's good that there was no such developed internet back then. Therefore, all this stuff remained inside one company. But as they say, it's already been talked about. Do you think she'll forgive me? Let's hope so. He did forgive Dan, though it wasn't easy either. Sometimes the power lies in forgiving and moving on.